of fun comes through. We're live now.
Awesome sauce. All right. Thank you, one and all. This is the 15th episode talk. This is in a lot of ways the episode y'all been waiting for. And for those of you who are new to this is my episode series where I get to interview gifted spiritualists and other YouTubers who spread conscious awareness. So, without further ado, how you doing, Nadiya? Thanks for joining.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much. Thank you for this moment with you, with your audience. And you're definitely one of those people who's about spreading higher consciousness as well. So it's great to be here with you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah, I'm really glad about the timing and how it ended up working out. More, I guess, I want to get nerdy into the transits and the moon being in Leo and whatnot, but like, yeah, I'm really good for that as well. And for those who don't know, although I'm pretty sure it's hard to not know, but Nadiya Shah is a very gifted astrologer, and she, like me, also illuminates the collective consciousness with astrological amazingness. With the standard question, what got you into astrology? How is astrology your study?
Well, I am of the belief that astrology chooses you because it's not something that anybody would readily choose, you know? It's not something that you're going to readily embrace because what does it mean? It means that you're going to be doing something that a lot of people don't understand, that a lot of people are afraid of as well, that people think that they're against, but they're actually kind of afraid. And, you know, it sort of puts you in this very interesting position. But ultimately, I think that to be an astrologer is to choose a path of developing self-trust and developing intuition. And that's something that's very much chosen for us. It's not necessarily something that people actively choose. I know that I didn't. What I can say is I know that I was, well, I remember a very clear moment when I was I was quite young, I was in junior high, and I remember in Canada in Toronto where I grew up, we have the CNE, which is the Canadian National Exhibition. It takes place the last 3 weeks of the summer. And what used to happen, now the whole process is online, but what used to happen is we would go, like the last month of summer, we would go and they'd have this huge job fair and you'd interview with people right on the spot, you'd get hired right on the spot, and you would have employment for 3 weeks. And so I remember I went and I interviewed with this woman, and I didn't know what I was interviewing for, but she like really just hired me after talking to me for 2 minutes. And she gave me this picture, and it had a hand on it, and it had arrows explaining what the different lines meant. And so what she'd done is she'd hired me to read palms for this fair. And for the last 3 weeks of the summer, when I was 14 years old, which was a long time ago, but I was 14 years old, and I remember I was reading like 30, 40, 50, sometimes 75 palms a day. And people were constantly telling me that I was good, I was so good at this, and you know, they were affirming what it was that I was doing. And then after that summer was over, like first of all, in the span of that time, I remember I learned so much about myself. I really got a feeling of what it means to be me, but I didn't realize it at that time. And then after that, you know, my family just started giving me like astrology books and saying, here, you'll be good at this. And then a few years later, my aunt Shireen, I remember she put a tarot deck in my hands and said, here, you'll be good at this. And that night I was doing tarot readings for her friends. And so it just kind of grew very organically. Yeah, I was in a family that was, you know, my family is kind of like, a part of the family is very spiritual, and they sort of nurtured and they saw that ability that I had to be really intuitive, and they nurtured that through giving me astrology books and helping me to learn about astrology. And then I also have a part of my family that's really intellectual and likes to think about things. As I was saying to you before we started, is my dad was actually at that time a politician, is a Leo, very charismatic, really, really idealist. And he really wanted me to follow, like, sort of in his footsteps and become a lawyer. And so I was encouraged to think, I was encouraged to speak my opinions, to speak contrary opinions. I was encouraged to just figure out who I am and what I believe. And so I feel like it was such an ideal environment for me. On the one hand, I had this environment that said I could be anything I wanted to be. And, you know, my parents, ever since I was little, they were like, you're going to be prime minister, you know, like a lot of parents do, especially immigrant parents. They tell their kids, you can be anything you want, you're going to be prime minister. And so I had that, and then I also had this very sort of intuitive support, or support of my intuition. And so that came together and allowed me to develop myself as an astrologer. But ultimately, it was many years later when I sort of, you know, I came to this point in my life when I sort of had this realization. It was kind of a very stark moment. And for students of astrology out there, I was going through my Saturn return. I had Pluto conjunct my moon. And basically what happened was I realized...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was having both of these simultaneously. And for me, the way that it sort of reached me was that I had this moment when I realized that I wasn't Madonna. And, you know, I'd spent my life thinking, like, really, that was it. Like, I spent my life thinking that's what it was to be successful, to have influence, to be a woman, because that was what was very celebrated in that time when I was very young. And I had that realization, and then I felt like, okay, who am I now? Like, who am I supposed to be? And then astrology just kind of came in very organically, where people who knew me started offering to pay me to practice astrology. I was in a job that I really hated. I was working in a call center, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And that's really when all these people started approaching me out of nowhere. Someone approached me to write for them, to write an astrology horoscope regular feature for their website. And that's when I sort of got the message that, okay, this is what I meant to do. And that was quite a few years ago, and it's just sort of grown from there, with me just doing something that I've always liked doing, that was easy to do, that's helped me in my life. It's just sort of organically grown from there, where now it's a part of my contribution in this lifetime.
That is exceptionally beautiful. I really enjoy the part you were talking about, you having your Saturn return and Pluto approach the moon. Personally, this strikes me because when I get my Saturn return, Pluto is going to hit my 23-degree moon. So I'm kind of curious, what is that like? Because I'm going to be Kanye West right now, so I think I'm pretty sure I would want to be that.
Right, but you know what? I'll tell you, now I look at the time, what I really realize now is a lot of the pain I felt was because I held on so tightly to some vision I had that wasn't what I was meant to be. And it wasn't me, really. It was a false vision that I was holding on to. Because I remember when I had that realization, it was like, you know, the world doesn't need another Madonna, but the world could use a Nadiya Shah. Now, who is that? You know, that was when the real journey began. That's when astrology really became what it was always meant to be in my life, which is something that's helped me, and in turn now I can use to help others. Now, I'm one of those people, I gotta be honest with you, I like Kanye West, personally. I really like Kanye West for a whole host of reasons. Yeah, I'll be honest about that. I like that, well, I like a lot of things about him, but let's put that to the side for a moment. I will say this, and the advice that I could give to you is that I realized that what I was always looking for was a platform. Like, I was looking for a way to just sort of validate my worthiness to do what I really wanted to do, which was to inspire people, to give people hope, to share my ideas about the universe, about spirituality. And I was always kind of looking for the vehicle. And I thought that, you know, being a pop star was that vehicle. And then I realized that, no, that isn't my vehicle, that's for sure. And that anything can be your vehicle to do those things, to fulfill that purpose. And so what I would say to you, having learned that myself, is you will figure out what feels right to you, what feels organic to you. But I know, looking back now, that it never felt right trying to be Madonna. Like, that's just not who I am at all. So it didn't feel right trying to be her. And now being me and becoming more and more me is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So I hope that you remember that and you embrace that and understand that ultimately Pluto conjunct your moon. Your Saturn return is about being honest with yourself. That's what the Saturn return is. Be honest with yourself. The Pluto over your moon is really sort of a rebirth. It's the life-death rebirth cycle. And wherever it is that you found emotional security or emotional fulfillment, where you've lied to yourself about where you're getting emotional fulfillment, but it isn't actually fulfilling you, you're going to get honest with yourself about that as well. So can I ask, what house is your Saturn in? What house is your moon in?
Oh my goodness, that's going to be a huge reality check. My Saturn is actually conjunct the moon and Neptune 24 degrees Capricorn in the ninth house. Sorry.
Wow.
But yeah, they're conjunct.
Wow.
Like on each
so
other.
you're gonna have Saturn and Pluto, like the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto is gonna happen right on top of that configuration that you have in your chart, basically. That ninth house configuration that you have playing out there.
Right now,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, that sounds like, and in Capricorn as well. Yeah, I mean, that could be a conversion. That could like really be a spiritual, converting to a whole other spiritual system that gives your life structure, something very traditional. Now that's like sort of immediate, just sort of coming out at 14. Me. How do you understand that?
Well, I was going to say Neptune is 14 degrees Capricorn, which is my ninth house cusp, where Pluto is. And true to what you said right now, my spiritual beliefs are changing. You kind of hit the nail on the head. Like verbatim. That's it. That's how I feel, at least. Like it's like something is wanting to break out right now.
Yeah, and so trust it. Yeah. Because that's all about like dissolving illusions, right? When Pluto moves over Neptune, which is something that a lot of people of your generation are going through. It's a generational thing, right? People born right around your age have been going through this, are going to continue going through this. People in their 20s right now going through this, in their mid-20s or so. And so this is something that you're going through. It's a shared experience with others of your generation, so you can embrace that. But the moon will be a lot more personal. Like when that conjunction happens with your moon and your Saturn, that'll be a lot more personal. And that's when I think you'll really come to understand yourself and your sense of yourself, what you really need, so much more deeply. I think it'll be great. Just don't, I would say this, this is not, I haven't looked at your chart, but I have really learned, having gone through several Pluto conjunctions in my life, I have really learned that you make things so much easier on yourself when you surrender. When you surrender and go along with the plan. Know that you might not always know, but there is a higher plan playing out for your life. That's first and foremost. But secondly, I do think that on the other side of it, you are a so much more honest version of yourself. Like you're you, free of fluff. And it's really empowering. It's a really great place to be.
I'm looking really forward to that because as a Cap Moon, I hold on to too much control. So like how you said, I'll be able to be more honest and just let go of illusions. Another question that I have for you, though, I personally feel that Aquarius is the zodiac sign of astrology. So when you think of the water bear and when you think of the actual, like, the sign, how do you feel like being an Aquarius woman tune into the cosmos and spread astrology? Because an astrologer in the true sense of the form in my head is like an Aquarius woman, just like vibes from the universe and sharing it with the rest of humanity.
Well, I think it's
so kind of like curious as to how it.
Yeah, it's like an archetypal energy. I totally get where you're coming from. I would say this, I think it depends how you're
Yeah,
approaching astrology, right? That's a huge part of it. How are you approaching astrology? Aquarian, I understand
it's true.
the Aquarius woman, right? So that archetype of the Aquarius woman, well, female is the sign of intuition, right? It's being receptive when we think of the female archetype. And then Aquarius is a sign of the future, and it's also about sort of blending art and
Mhm.
science. So that's where that whole like sort of connection with astrology comes in, that blending art and science connects with Aquarius, which is why a lot of people think of astrology as sort of ruled by the sign of Aquarius. But I think it's about how you approach your astrology. Some people say that the planet Mercury rules astrology, and that's possible as well, because if you're looking at it as a technical process that you're aiming to engage in from a detached
Mhm.
perspective, then yes, it could be ruled by Mercury. Some people think it's more of a Sag kind of thing, a Sag ninth house kind of thing,
Mhm.
because it involves embracing a certain worldview. So I can see it from that perspective. Some people think it has more to do with the water signs because it's more intuitive. It's more of an intuitive process as well. So I think it really depends on how you approach it. But every sign, like whatever sign is more dominant in your chart, and if you are drawn to astrology, you can find a way to use who you are, to tap into who you are, and bring that to your practice. Because ultimately, your practice in astrology, it only reflects you. It is a reflection of you as well.
Yeah, I really resonate with um, the water practice too. I could be a bit as a Gemini too, just really free with the way I express my thoughts, and then I'll get intuitive in a fantasy land. But one thing that I really appreciate about you and your perspective is that you always bring science in. So it's not that you're just making claims and you know how to like point you say, but connect all this information together and just show more how we're all one and connected. So how do you feel? How do you like engage like the scientific community or people who are still skeptical about this practice, and how do you help them see what this is in a way that they're able to at least be more open to it?
Well, I think that, we have to be really careful because I think that as astrologers, there is sort of this collective wound that we have from being rejected and demonized by those like quote unquote more scientific oriented people. I don't think that astrology needs to be justified in that sort of context. I see astrology as a practice of divination. It's a practice of poetry, a
Mm.
practice of music. You can't prove music. You can't prove poetry. And it's the same way with astrology. Ultimately, what we're doing is we're translating symbols into a language that hopefully the people that we are expressing it to, they can understand it in some way, be better for that translation. That's what we do as astrologers. And so for me, I think that ultimately who you are is going to determine the astrologers that you resonate with. So whatever worldview you are bringing in as an astrologer, you can't have astrology without the astrologer. So as the astrologer, whatever worldview you are bringing is going to determine what you are perceiving when you look at the sky. And as a consumer of astrology, as somebody who loves astrology or likes astrology or utilizes astrology in your life or finds it interesting at times, ultimately you are going to resonate more with those astrologers who have a similar worldview to your own. And so for me, I think I'm not so interested in like trying to convert anybody, because literally that's what it is, to try and justify what we do from a scientific perspective. We're trying to convert people who have no interest
Mhm.
in doing that, rather than just focusing in on doing what we do well, and doing what we do honestly and from the heart, and giving it to the people who are so ready to receive it. So I think that science to me does not have to be contrary to astrology, not at all. In fact, I love watching science programs. I recently have become this huge fan of the series Cosmos. And so this series Cosmos is just this real exploration of the sky and the different processes and the earth processes. And to me, I think that what's happening on the physical level is speaking to what happens with us on a spiritual level. And so I love it. I love learning about science, and I'm always looking at the metaphor, the deeper spiritual connection that's being displayed here, just like the ancient scientists used to do, just like Ptolemy did when he wrote the Amalgist, which was really like one of those seminal works in astronomy, but he also wrote Tetrabiblos, which is the foundational book to Western astrology. It's the same kind of thing. Now, I'm not like a scientifically minded person, but I do enjoy learning about that as well. And so I think, you know what, just enjoy what you do, enjoy your life, find like-minded people, strengthen that energy, strengthen those communities, and that's when we're powerful. Not when we're trying to get other people to see our point of view or to accept our point of view. People who have their own journey, who are on their own spiritual journey for whatever reason, are not meant to, maybe not now at this point in their life, or may be meant to in this life. But regardless, if we choose to emphasize what's good about what we're doing, find like-minded people and emphasize those communities, I think it helps more than challenging other people. It helps us to be more and more stronger. And also, like, the reason that I agreed to do this interview with you as well is because I think that the more of us share, right, the more of us that are willing to interact publicly, like you and I are right now, but also just share genuinely, just share our spiritual path, share who we are, I think it gives more of us permission to do the same. And so I'm very much about people, like when I meet people, one of the big things I do is, like, I love telling people to start a YouTube channel. I love doing that. I'm always like, start a YouTube channel. It's really great. Like, everything good in my life has come about through doing that, or at least many great things have come in my life just from being willing to share and being seen. And I really believe the more of us that do that, the more we contribute to that energy, the more we emphasize what's really great and what can be really great about our practice as astrologers.
That was so beautifully said. I especially love the part about you mentioning that it's a language that we can relate and decode symbols from. And also, last episode, the guest that I had was saying that a beautiful part about all this is that we have the our stories. I'm really also about, like, people making YouTube channels and, like, just sharing themselves, because you never know who will really be affected deeply by the stuff that you say and share and express. Even if it doesn't do anything, you're still having fun expressing yourself, right? But another question that I have, really interested in this Neptune and Pisces transit. I feel that is currently affecting, or we could even say revolutionizing, spirituality with the Uranus and Aries influence. Mm-hmm. So this creativity that's bubbling up and everything.
So you're looking to explore, you're interested in Neptune and Chiron in Pisces? That's what's sort of intriguing you right now in your practice?
Yeah. I don't know if it's because it's in my 10th house and I look up to the energy, but I've always been into, like, energy and how I guess it's so out there, but, like, just how since it is so soul moving, I guess, but how more so is it affecting people's perspective on what is spiritual? And yeah.
Yeah, well, Neptune is associated with the New Age movement, certainly historically. I recently did a talk with Astrology Toronto, and I talked about the historical development of astrology, which is something I love talking about. It's sort of like my comfort zone, if you will. I love talking about the historical and philosophical development of astrology. And Neptune's discovery coincided with the Theosophy movement. And so I think that that is a huge sort of theme right now. Neptune right now being in its home sign of Pisces is able to bring forward its more spiritual qualities, bring forward its highest qualities, if you will, which include wanting to have a more personal and intimate experience of energy, of spirituality. And then you add to this Chiron being there as well, which is sort of collectively saying to us that that's where our healing is. If we allow ourselves to explore and to heal those things that we think maybe would not heal, or to face those things that we normally would deny as part of growing spiritually as well. I actually think that Chiron moving through Pisces is more about addictions and us learning and accepting more deeply about addictions as well. And changing the way we think about them, changing the way we approach them, the way that we treat them as well. So I think it brings a real focus on taking real progress, making real progress in the realm of addictions as well. But there's a certain quality that comes with this Neptune and Chiron in these signs, which has to do with also needing to be really honest with ourselves as well. And so that's the thing, because that Piscean vibe, especially with Neptune there, it can be so much about energy is everything. Well, yeah, energy is everything, but we're incarnated for a reason, right? So that's what Saturn is about. Saturn says we are incarnated for a reason. The earth plane is just as spiritual as any energetic or emotional or spiritual plane is, and is just as important to our learning and our growth and our spirituality as any other plane of existence is. So to find that right balance, I think, is going to be really important, especially considering that we are coming up, before the year is out, we are going to start, and I think we've already started experiencing this this element of Neptune and Saturn squaring. So right now, as we're recording this, because I don't know how long this video will end up being online, but it's 2015, and late this year, we're going to start a series of squares between Neptune and Saturn, which I think in part is going to be a lot about this whole conversation between, okay, how can we make reality spiritual? How is the mundane spiritual as well? How can we not use spirituality to escape, but rather find a sense of connection that is grounded, that is real, that is practiced? And so you also mentioned Uranus and Aries. Well, to me, I think that that is, you know, the culture of empires that we find ourselves in. I mean, that's what I think the YouTube, whole phenomenon YouTube channels are about. And Uranus squaring Pluto is that we are now in a culture of empires. We're in a culture of people sort of doing their own thing, not waiting for permission to do what it is that they really want to do. And, you know, just like with me, I'm on YouTube and I'm, you know, doing what I do, sharing who I am. And then also I have my book and I'm offering different things through my website as well. I think that a lot of people are doing this in their own way in whatever it is that they want to do it in. And so a lot of people are doing this. For example, I know people who love video games, and they have video game channels, and they're writing books related to video games, and, you know, they're doing all that stuff because that's what they love. And literally whatever your niche is and whoever you are, you have a place in the world, and you have people who want to connect with you as well. And I think that's a big part of what Uranus and Aries, particularly as it's been speaking with Pluto, has really been about as well. And so how do you balance that then with, ultimately, this is Pluto in Capricorn squaring Uranus has been about that, taking ownership for what you want to be and do in the world, and starting it, doing that thing, being that thing, and at the same time, keep that sense of inspiration, of faith, and of purpose as well. I think that's part of our collective learning right now as well. Because I think, especially in the spiritual path, it's very easy for some of us in a spiritual path. I think, and what I've seen again and again, is that sort of, as part of a spiritual journey, some people, that includes having to have experiences in addiction. And so for some people, as they're learning to manage their spiritual energy, they might go on a bit of a detour towards addictions as part of learning to manage the spiritual energy. And so I think that that's a big part of what we're learning right now as a collective as well, with particularly with Chiron in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces, is to understand that ultimately that addiction is just one part. It's sort of one of the first steps towards managing and utilizing your spirituality, your spiritual energy, and your sensitivity to actually serve other people and make the world better in a meaningful way.
I love that part, that last part too. Well, I love the part you mentioned about the addictions at one level, because this Chiron is squaring my sun like exactly 20 degrees. So I'm really starting to come to grips with really realistically dealing with this. But the part that I meant that I loved was when you said that the earth realm is just as spiritual as any other realm. And I've really had come to hard grips really accepting that, especially just anyone who feels like escaping from all this, whether in not so healthy or healthy ways, if there are healthy ways to escape. But please, would you also, I know you mentioned it earlier, would you bring up your book again and tell us more about it? It's called Astrology Realized, correct?
Yes, my book, Astrology Realized. Really proud of my book. I love all the amazing feedback it's gotten. Thank you so much to everybody out there who's bought the book, who's reviewed the book online at the different sites it's available. Very shortly, the hard copy is going to be available as well. So the book has been out for 2 years as an electronic copy in many, many websites throughout the web. Now it's going to start as a hard copy. So very excited about that. And very soon the Spanish version, the Spanish translation will be available as well. So really excited about these developments. My book, Astrology Realized, it is about, on the one hand, it's practical in that it is about learning to read charts. So it takes you from absolute beginner, or if you're not a beginner, it takes you back to the fundamental first steps towards actually reading a chart, to getting to the point where you're able to read your own birth chart and start reading the charts of your friends and other people and celebrities, which is how we start to learn to get comfortable with reading charts and start to get comfortable translating the symbols. That's what the book is about on the one hand. So it is a technical book. But the really important part of the book to me, and the way that I think the book is different, is on the one hand, I do have this whole first section that's on the historical and philosophical development of astrology. So that whole first section is free. So you can download that on my website and on the different sort of the different booksellers out there. You can download that for free. And that really is about looking at how astrology has evolved, our understanding of astrology, how astrology has been understood in these different environments, and how it found a home in these different cultural environments as well. Because astrology is a living practice, and as a living practice, it evolves to serve the people within the context it finds itself in. And so that's the first part of the book, an exploration of that. But then the other thing, and the reason that the book is called Astrology Realized, is that really comes from Jeffrey Cornelius. So Jeffrey Cornelius is a former professor of mine. He wrote The Moment of Astrology, which is sort of this very seminal kind of intermediate to advanced astrology book. So when you're just learning astrology, when you're in the beginning stages, you come across certain people that you're definitely going to read. But then once you move past that, you start to get serious about your practice. That's when you come across Jeffrey's book. That's when people know Jeffrey's work. He's very well respected. And as I said, he was one of my very dear professors in my master's program. And he talked about the difference between a speculative reading and a realized reading. So a speculative reading essentially is when you know the techniques and you know the interpretations, you've done the work. And so basically it is, like if you were to look at a chart and you were to say, for example, let's say somebody has Venus in the first house in Aries, and it is opposite, it is in opposition to Pluto in the 7th house in Libra, right? Let's say, just as an example. Well, a speculative reading would say, okay, well, you know, maybe you have power struggles in your relationships, maybe at some point you've been the aggressor, and maybe at some point other people have been, maybe you felt that people treated you unfairly in relationships and love. Like these are the types of things. Maybe you can be a little bit obsessive, or maybe a lot obsessive in love as well. Maybe with your beauty as well, and the way you present yourself and what you think is beautiful can be really macabre. Like these are all different ways to understand that symbol and how that symbol might play out in a person's life. But it is a realized reading that is able to step beyond that and actually speak a truth to the heart of the person. It is a realized reading that's able to look at that and say, oh, wow, okay, you just got out of a really abusive relationship, and now you're at a point where you think you never want to be in another relationship again. So that type of jump, right, that jump from just saying it could mean this and it could mean that, to actually speaking something that resonates to the heart of the person you are speaking to, that is actually the truth of the heart of how that symbol is being experienced in that person's life, is the difference between a speculative reading and a realized reading. And so in my book, I'm really big on getting you towards having those realized experiences, towards observing your own practice every step of the way. So as you're learning these practical techniques, you're also observing yourself. You're also being mindful of your own process of when you're doing a reading that you think is good, is spot on, and when you're doing a reading that's, you know, kind of iffy, to actually make that jump. I think that's when astrology is most rewarding, personally, as an astrologer, but also I think that's when astrology really is at its best, when it speaks something true and something honest to the experience that you are looking at as represented in the chart. So that's what the book really is about, and it's about helping people to facilitate the beginning of a journey that I hope would be a lifelong practice, and a very rewarding lifelong practice at that.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I definitely love that. I definitely went through something like that as far as my journey of chart reading. Getting to that point where you really could, it's just an amazing feeling when you do cut to the heart of the chart, and then you could tell you struck a chord, and then there's just that connection there, and then your faith in the whole practice just even grows more. Before you wrap up, let's play a quick game, the questions game that I play. We're going to take turns asking each other 3 questions.
Okay, awesome.
We'll start with you. You can ask one, and then I'll answer, then ask you, and then answer.
Okay, so I get to ask you a question first?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you, what drew you to start this online interview process? What drew you to this? Why do you like doing this?
I like doing this because I like how it kind of shows people, number one, that there is a community, because you could just scroll through the YouTube channels, or you could scroll through the videos and see that there's different people that do this, but I just like hangouts like these that promote the culture and to show there is a community of like-minded individuals. But more so, I just really like to interview and just like, you know, pick people's brains and like get into how they think, and I just wanted to incorporate that here on another separate level of why I also do this. But yeah, I would say that would be the main motivation, other than just creating awareness of this and to really just get people's ideas out there. Yeah, I just like to talk. So jumping up.
Awesome.
My question is, what is your favorite tarot card and why?
That is a great question. Wow. Okay. Well, the immediate thing that came to my mind is the sun card. And the reason that I say that is because, to me, actually, it's interesting that I'm talking to you today, because today is the birthday of Cancun. And I love this city. I love Cancun so much. And so what happened for me was, and I'll just share this very quickly, I knew for a long time that the end of the Mayan calendar, late 2012, that I had to be here, that I really wanted to be here for that event. I knew years in advance. And so I had planned it sort of on a deeper level, but didn't actually confirm the plans until like a few weeks before I actually left. But I remember when I arrived in Cancun, it just like instantly felt like home. It instantly felt like where my learning was, where it was that I was meant to be. And a lot of things were happening in my chart, but also a lot of things when I look at the synastry between me and Cancun are taking place there as well, that speak to some very strong experiences and strong connections that I would make here, strong karmic connections. And that's exactly what happened, like sort of right out of the gate. And I just knew that I had to be here. And so, of course, with Cancun, what is it? It's the sun. A big part of the Cancun and why people love it is the sun. And so earlier, just before I confirmed and before we started talking, a friend of mine messaged me and said, hey, do you realize it's Cancun's birthday? And I went, oh my God, yeah, because I have looked at that chart so much. I couldn't believe that it slipped my mind. But I always associate the sun card with Cancun. Because this is a place where a lot of people come, and they come here for the sun, right? They come here for the sun and the beach. But the sun is also a symbol of illumination. It's a symbol of rationality and also prophecy as well. And so that to me is really important to have both of those, because I really love the idea of, divine prophecy. But also I think that our rationality is a gift as well. And so I love bringing those two together, and even in my work, I love bringing the intellect with the spiritual together. And then I love being in Cancun, and that to me is a card of Cancun and the blessings that Cancun has given me as well. So I'm glad that you asked me that, because it gave me a chance to give a shout out to this city that I love so much.
Awesome. Very awesome.
Okay, so my turn. Let me ask you, what is your favorite planet and why? If you have a favorite planet at this point in your life, what planet do you most resonate with and why?
That is also a great question, because I recently started getting really personal with the planets as far as I perceive and engage them. I love Neptune, but my favorite planet is Uranus right now, because just seeing it rebirth in Aries is really inspiring. I really am drawn to that. The astrologer Christopher Witecki calls it the royal pain in the ass, and I'm really drawn to that. Just spark to be so different from everything, even to the detriment of everything else. But just that brilliance and that comes from innovation and the electricity and the electrifying energy that comes from it. I'm just really drawn to that right now. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if my favorite planet switches, but right now, I would definitely say it's the planet Uranus. I'm trying to see, because I have a conjunct Neptune, so I'm trying to see more into like the occult side of it, or as far, not necessarily even the occult side, but the hidden side of Uranus that is starting to kind of like show itself more. I'm not even sure how to put it into words, but I just feel like there's a part of it that we're being introduced to for the first time, like another face of it. But yeah, I would say that's my favorite planet for sure. I also love Mercury. I guess it's an affinity I have. It's on my rising sign, like exactly too. So I've really come to learn, like, love how it influences everything around me. My second question for you is, what are your 3 favorite zodiac signs, and what are your 3 favorite signs, and then 3 signs that give you the most challenge?
Wow. Okay. I love all signs, and I don't say that to be, diplomatic. I really do love all the signs, because I think they all represent sort of a step in our spiritual expression, really, or another part of our spiritual expression. It's like saying, what number between 1 and 12 do you like best? Well, each number has its sort of expression and has its great points, as well. And so I really like all of them. It's really hard for me to say, like, what do I like best? What do I find challenging? I guess, again, like the reason I asked you about the planets was because whatever planet we're interested in at any given time, it speaks more to our own learning and our own process as well. So whatever planet we're drawn to as part of our learning, it will be reflected in what it is that we are going through, what archetype within us that we are developing. And I remember there was a time when like I would connect with a different planet every year. Like I would say, okay, this year is the year of the moon, and then this year was the year of the sun, and then another year was the year of Jupiter. And I did that as part of getting to know these planets much more intimately as parts of myself. And so when you ask about the signs, I guess they're all like, you know, part of me. And so it's hard to say, but I will say that I'll start with the challenging parts, because one thing I've really realized with Cancun, you know, Cancun has, it's a very interesting energy because people come here to relax, right? They come here to lay back, they come here to relax. And when I'm here, like sort of my chart changes, my relocation chart changes, but natally, I have Saturn in the first house. And so my sort of natural inclination, especially when I'm home in Toronto, is, you know, go, 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 work, work, work. You can't do enough. And I just feel like if I'm not working, what am I doing? I'm not spending my time well, you know? So that's sort of my natural inclination. But then here, the energy really changes, and it becomes much more about not only finding that balance, right, but not going all the way the other way becomes a part of it as well. So I would say right now, I'm learning about the earth signs a lot. I'm learning to balance the earth signs a lot. My progressed moon right now is in Taurus. And so I think that's part of it as well. For the next few months, my progressed moon remains in Taurus. And so that, to me, those lessons have to do with manifestation. They have to do with, you know, putting in the time, honoring the physical realm, but also enjoying the fruits of your labor as well, which is what that is about to me. And Cancun has a lot of Taurian energy. It's got all this Taurus energy, and it is opposing a Jupiter in Scorpio. And so it's certainly like known as sort of overdoing it as well. But I think that's part of the lessons here, is ultimately there's a depth and a reality that is beyond just the physical that the water signs represent, and especially Scorpio represents. But at the same time, there's this earth plane, you know, as I think is sort of a theme that's emerging as we're talking, that has to do with honoring sort of, you know, what you put in is what you get out, and showing up, right? Actually showing up. So that's all part of it as well, is finding that right balance. But I can say that when I was just all about work and go, 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 when I didn't have that balance, I was repeatedly getting burned out. It was repeatedly happening, and I wasn't nearly as effective as I am now. And so I think that there's a balance that needs to be found in all of us. What that balance is going to be a unique part of it. But certainly I think I'm learning about that now. And so because I'm also learning about balance, I'll also choose the air signs. I'll choose the air signs as well, because they are about balance and considering other perspectives, and ultimately they're very social signs as well. So they have to do with bouncing ideas off of other people, but ultimately making up your own mind as well. So I think those are sort of encompassing a lot of my learning right about now. So my question for you, my next question for you is, what do you love about your life right now? Like, what's really working in your life right now? What do you really love about what's happening with you right now in your life, at this point in your life?
Oh my God, that's an awesome question. I'm going to say this, really. I've been through a period where it's like, I used to be so depressed because I've realized that, like, I've always been someone who's, you know, I've had depressions, but I've always had stuff to be happy about. But there was a long period I went through where I just felt like impotent. Like, all the stuff that I did, I didn't really feel it ultimately meant anything. And I'm not gonna lie, I still kind of feel that. But the only thing that's different is that every single action that I've taken to, you know, assert myself and express who I am, which I would say this channel and this vocation has markedly, distinctly, indistinctly, like, identified what things are in my life. So I would say I really love this. Not necessarily astrology, but sharing my spirituality It's exposed how much I prioritize it. It's exposed how much I need to develop in my life. And it's also exposed where people truly stand with me, because now I hang out with friends who I'm not really into this as much. And then it makes me wonder, well, is my friendship, it's actually strengthened some friendships, because now it's like, all right, we don't really agree with this, but we still have a connection, which is outside of it, and help to define that more. It's separated me for some people who aren't into it. So I would really say I love this the most, for sure. Um, yeah, and just how it's kind of teaching me to be more myself, and not be afraid to express that and get to know more people. Another reason why I do love this too is because I've always as a kid wished to have a way of understanding people more, and I feel like this is like one of the biggest wishes come true, like to the T, as far as one of the systems. Before I was doing Myers Briggs, but I love how they blend. So my last question for you is, I love always asking these questions, but what do you feel the newer, younger generation is going to uh, how do you feel the newer, younger generation is going to carry on this torch of spirituality, in an esoteric, but also in a political way too? How do you feel? Do you feel that Pluto and Aquarius transit may switch things up as far as that? Um, Even outside of Pluto, like how do you feel the younger generation take things or carry on?
Well, I think that the fact that we have, because everything in the physical world is a reflection of what's happening with us and how we understand ourselves as human beings. I think the fact that we as a collective have manifested the internet is amazing. It speaks volumes about who we understand ourselves to be, about our connection to everyone and everything, about our right to know everything and to plug into source and know that there is this whole tradition and this whole ancestry that we're connected to, that's not limited just by physical ancestry, but there's an ancestry of thought, an ancestry of spirituality that we can connect to, that we are all a part of, especially based on wherever your consciousness is, that there are people who have walked before you wherever you are in your spiritual path, in your place right now in terms of your consciousness. So I think that the younger generation, it is about sort of naturally embracing that and taking that to the next level in terms of whatever it is that they choose to do and how it is that they choose to change the world. I think the whole digital element is going to be a huge part of that. And I also think that, one thing I've really realized is, especially now, because of where I am, and I see this whole culture now that I've, traveled extensively, there's this huge culture in the world of digital nomads, right? And so basically this is people who don't believe in borders, who believe in like the limitlessness of the world, who work entirely online, who do everything that they do online. And so they're really free. They're their own bosses. They travel wherever they want. They live wherever they want. And they have an element of self-trust and freedom involved in that as well. And they're doing exactly what it is that they want, a very honest expression of who they are as well. And there's this huge culture of people doing this throughout the world. And so when I look at the future generations in terms of what they're going to contribute, I think a part of that is going to be very self-directed as a part of that. And I think also another part of that is tapping into that whole understanding of all of us being connected, of utilizing the whole digital element as part of that, like making it almost second nature as a part of that expression as well. I do also think, like with the younger generation, because you just asked about Pluto and Aquarius. And, it's interesting because I thought about the age of Aquarius, and a lot of people, like, they think that the age of Aquarius is going to be this sort of enlightened time, and all of a sudden everybody's going to be holding hands and singing. And there may be people doing that. People are doing that now. But the thing is that I was very influenced by an essay called Eon, written by Carl Jung, in which he talks about the fact that Aquarius, just like Pisces, when you look at the glyph of Pisces, right, it has a very strong duality to it, right? The Pisces, the sign of the fishes, two fishes swimming in opposite directions. So it's a very strong duality playing out there. So you have the people who are, you know, about the connection, communion. You also have people who are really delusional and false prophets as well. And that all falls under the archetype of Pisces. Well, with Aquarius, like you were saying earlier, we've got that new age part of Aquarius, right? That mixing science and spirituality, and this whole like sort of evolved understanding of consciousness and the new age movement, the new thought movement, very much Aquarian energy. Aquarius is a sign of humanitarianism and of the collective, but it's also a very individual sign. It's a sign of atheism. It's a sign of science and scientific sort of rationality as well. And so when we look at those, they don't necessarily have to be opposed, but they can certainly be presented as opposites, right? Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily, like I said, I love science. I love the scientific programs. I feel that they're so spiritual. That's my perspective. But there are a lot of people who are scientists who are really proponents of that way to look at the world that are really anti anything spiritual. And so I think we're going to continue to have this interesting dichotomy where some people are going to be hyper-rational, and then other people are likely to evolve in a direction of a lot of personal responsibility, you know, and saying, okay, yes, everything is spirit, so let's work on spirit to change what's happening on the physical realm. And so it should be a very interesting way to look at how we move forward, continuing, because in some ways I think that we as humanity have decided that at least at this leg in our evolution to learn through duality, to learn through dichotomy. And I think that that has been dominant as we've been going through the age of Pisces. And I actually think that that's going to continue to be part of our evolution and part of our growth opportunities as we move into the age of Aquarius as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really excited to see the developments in science. However, I'm pretty sure that's going to be super righteous. Well, we're going to close here. I'm going to provide the link to your YouTube channel in the description box below. I think I already did. But could you enlighten us as far as how people can reach you and what kind of services do you offer in readings?
Sure, thank you. I have, of course, my YouTube channel, and I have my website as well. And so my website is nadiyashah.com. It's also theuniverseiswiseandloving.com, and also synchronicitypublications.com. So if you enter either one of those, astrofabulous.com, if you enter either one of those, you'll find me online. And I do a few different things. So I have Astrofabulous, which is video and written horoscopes. And that's part of how people come to know me, through my online video horoscopes. I also have Synchronicity Web TV, where I interview people in the New Age world, people in astrology as well. So we're going into our 5th season this year. So it's really very exciting. I've interviewed like just about every astrologer that I've wanted to interview so far. I've got about 150 different astrologers that I've interviewed on there. And so we have that show as well. Of course, there's my book, Astrology Realized. There's personalized horoscopes where I do read people's charts. I can look at your chart, answer personal questions as well. And there's always something more that I'm doing as well. So I hope that you'll check in, tune in, continue to stay connected with me, of course. And I'm just, again, so grateful to have this moment with you, with your audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me once again. Stay tuned, everybody, for our next episode. Should be on Monday, tomorrow. And until next time, peace.